There's an image, powerful one, from a film. And I believe it was Midnight Run or something like that. It's about a young man trying to smuggle some drugs out of Afghanistan or a Muslim country. And it was the story of his attempt to find an easy life that led to an absolute nightmare of a life, that everyone around him in that prison never escaped. All succumbed. But they didn't just succumb in the way in which you would think someone does when it's evident life has held you captive. The scene in my mind, and it was the turning point really, in the film, there was an underground cavern in this prison. And all of the prisoners, ostensibly most Muslim, they would walk clockwise around some tremendous stone there in the center of this cavern that represented probably a holy stone, the mosque of some kind. And when one walked in a circle, which is, they would repeat these prayers, and there was this consistent tide of human beings that circled the stone. And he himself spent much time down there because there was consolation in walking around the stone and praying. But the consolation was as much a deception as it was a way in which someone could be delivered from their circumstance, because everyone there was just part of a tide of life. And the change in his life came, the moment of his escape came when, instead of moving in the circle with everyone, he began to walk counterclockwise to everyone there. And that led to a series of events, which I'm not going to go into because the film isn't important. What's important is for you to understand, and I have a picture in mind to give it to you. Imagine a beautiful piece of driftwood, shaped almost perfectly like a human being. Small one, not big. Here's this piece of driftwood, and you can see that at points that driftwood is moving in a current, and it's carried around gently around these stones, and you can see it's just floating around, and you would think, oh, what a lucky piece of wood. Everything's so calm and mellow. It gets to see all of these beautiful things. But then at certain points, just by the nature of the current, it'd suddenly be washed into an eddy, and then everything would be crashing against it, and its life would go from calm eddies to crashing places. And the point is, so that I don't get too far off of it, is that stick is inert. It's moving, but it is inert. Human beings move, but they are inert. They are carried in moments where all is calm and quiet and beautiful. Even listening to music, one closes their eyes and they're carried in the current of it. But the nature that is inert to the environment around it will always suffer inevitably when the current of life changes and produces an instant in which, instead of this gentle movement, now there's a crash, now there's a problem. You must not go gently with the movement of life the way that you presently want to do. You must struggle to stay awake. You must struggle to stay awake. Because there's consolation in moving in that circle. There's comfort in being part of the world, because at least in that world, even though it's a prison, there's no problems because you're in conformity with everything. You don't understand how you are carried by the waves of this mind. And it feels as though you're active, but you are inert. And what do I mean by inert? You are not present. To be present costs a human being the comfort of being carried by thoughts, the comfort and the agitation of having a position or something to prove. All of those things are part of this human life, and you must, as an aspirant, begin to recognize, without even thinking about it, my God, I mustn't go to sleep. I mustn't go to sleep. Because everything about this world and the currents of it are dedicated to seeing that you move in that clockwise motion, a part of this great circle of life that does not serve the individual who loves God, but serves the nature that uses that individual to keep everything in its place. Don't be a part of this place. You can be active in the waves, active in the current. And active in the current means you're aware that this current is moving you. Not this current is moving me and I'm identified with it because look at me, isn't this nice? Or, oh God, what's happened to me? You want to stay awake. I'll say this to you until the day that I die. The individual who is awake in the midst of the current of this life, including all the human beings who unconsciously serve those conditions, only that person finds the way. And the way they find is inherent in their presence, in their understanding that if they're not active inwardly, they are inert in spite of how active everything feels around them. When you're caught in thought as you meander around the room and do the things you do, you feel very vibrant. It could be a negative vibrancy or a positive vibrancy, but it feels alive. And I tell you, it isn't alive. You are inert in it. And the way that you know you're inert is you get carried to the rocks. Inevitably, you get carried to something that you go, oh God, now what? And then it's too late because now you're in a relationship with something that you were carried off to in this circle, in this unconscious circle of self-consolation. Don't do it. It's the best I can tell you. Stay awake at all costs. Stay awake.